So to start with, I'll just go on to the next slide, which is basically a little bit like you were just saying. A lot of us know people, or even ourselves, are inflicted by depression or anxiety, and pretty much everybody in this room will at some point or other know someone personally who's had something like that happen to someone they love and care about. I'd probably got myself into this rather false impression that I was a bit impervious to this, although a lot of people who I knew and a lot of people even within my family were. I'd got myself to this idea that, you know, I know all the Stoic literature, I read a lot, I surround myself with great people. It isn't going to happen to me, until it did. And what I found was on the 3rd of June, boot camp, Thursday morning, about 7 minutes in, I just couldn't get my heart rate under any kind of control. And so I sat on the beach for about 45 minutes, just trying to get it below about 140, freaking out, thinking I was going to have a heart attack or something. And so I decided I had to figure out what was going on. So after rapidly rushing down to the local Medcare and just ensuring that it wasn't anything more than I thought it was, I realized that it had to be something to do with stress. My heart rate was kind of fine. My blood pressure was fine. All my blood tests were okay. And so being a guy, being a finance guy, I decided to look at the data that was available to me, and this was basically it. That's pretty much all I had. I just want to see a show of hands. How many people kind of wear something like a Garmin or some kind of measurable technology? Great. So pretty much, I don't know, probably more than half the room. I decided to look into what was going on with me and tried to look at it in a different way. Up to that point, I'd probably use this for how many steps, how far I'd run, how quick I'd run, a little bit around heart rate and a little bit about sleep. But it was pretty much a cursory 2 or 3 minutes every day, quick look, and so on. And now I'd had these kind of anxiety incidents, and I'd had about 4. Blair was there for my very first one when, well, I just didn't have the foggiest idea what was going on. And then, as I say, boot camp was the last one. So I started to look into what the Garmin was showing me. This is what I shared on the group a little while ago. It's a load of squiggles. It's actually my stress level out of 100 going back about 2.5 years. And the different squiggles are just averages, 7-day average, 28-day average, 120-day average. But the black lines are really the lines of best fit. And this goes right back to when, so at this point here in 2019, I lived with one woman, my wife. At this point here, I lived with 5 women. So a lot changed. A lot changed. You know, I'm going to leave it. Who was it? Voltaire who left it, or somebody left it. I'm going to do the same. And what it showed me going back these years was it went down, up, down, up, down, up, and then around the end of the year it went up and it stayed up. It didn't go back down. So for about this is the end of the year. Pretty much the end of the year onwards, I was at a very, very high level of stress, and I didn't really notice. I was kind of thinking I was managing. It was all fine. Things were going to get better. I was constantly focusing on, you know, events that were going to happen in the future, not really focusing on what was happening at the time. And then this, if you can see it back there, this little squiggle, this is the boot camp incident where my heart rate, my stress level was pretty much off the chart at that point. And so I had to do something about it. So 6 months of continuous stress. So what was going on at that time? As I say, I went from 1 to 5 women living in my house. I had an expectant mum for the first time. She was having her first child. I'm obviously married twice. I had a 16-year-old going through GCSEs who was doing it all remotely. I had a 23-year-old who was finishing off her degree remotely away from her cohort. The grandparents showed up just before the baby was born. They're finished. They don't really speak any English. I had about 8. At that time, I had 6 women in the house and 1 guy who didn't speak any English. So it was pretty difficult. But what it showed me down here is that all of these things were happening around me. They weren't actually happening to me. there was only really one thing happening to me, and it's that thing over there. I was a pretty reluctant and terrified 57-year-old new dad. And all the time, as anyone who's had children will testify, it doesn't matter what age you are, when you first have that child, all kinds of existential thoughts go through your mind. Added to that, she actually fell pregnant when I was 56, which is the age that my father passed away. And I don't know how many people that's happened to, but again, that is a bit of a mess with the head when that kind of thing happens. So I had quite a lot going on around me, but really only one thing happening to me, and it was terrified, reluctant new dad at 57. Interestingly, if I go back to the chart, when I look at when I was least stressed, the very, very least stressed I was right in the middle of lockdown. Lockdown seemed to really appeal to me. I got super chilled out. Unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you look at it, precisely 9 months later, my daughter was born. So be careful about getting too chilled out, because suddenly it might just go in a slightly different direction. So I started to think about, I had a wonky brain somewhere, and I had to figure out what was at play here. All of that really, I think actually social connection kind of encompasses all the rest to some degree or other. And as I started to look through the various aspects of this, it was the social connection that really got me through what was a pretty stressful and distressing time. So first thing was a little bit like the yoga. I downloaded Insight Timer. As luck would have it, the day I kind of had my incident on the beach, I was meeting Adam Ashcroft for breakfast. He put me onto Insight Timer, and I started to meditate. This is David G. I don't know, maybe nobody's heard of him. If you're struggling to sleep, stick him on. I absolutely guarantee you will not last 20 minutes. You will be asleep before the end. He's got the most incredible voice I've ever heard in terms of getting you to sleep. But what it also did, the meditation for me, was getting me into the now. What I'd become pretty good at, I was always focusing on, when that happens, things will get better, and but then that's happened. So when that happens, and I was constantly living ahead of time. So I started to really focus on, okay, well, stuff's going to happen when it happens. I've got to be the best version of me now, not worry and wait for what's going to happen down the line. The most challenging, so that was easy. The most challenging part was definitely the having the conversations. I think many people in the room know the concept of radical candor and the four-box approach here. Why it was so difficult for me, and frankly why my stress levels had managed to ramp up, was because I was constantly oscillating between ruinous empathy and obnoxious aggression. And I'll give you an example around when my stress levels were quite high. Again, I'll go back to the graph. So since my stress level went up, the only time it's really gone down was when the grandparents left, which was about 2 or 3 weeks after Mary was born. In fact, that went down further than a trip to the Maldives. So clearly there was quite a lot of things going on. And going back to the ruinous empathy versus the obnoxious aggression. So for probably 3 or 4 weeks, I was, being the nice in-law and trying to keep everybody from murdering one another. And then we went out. My wife clearly knew something was up, and we went out for a walk. And at a certain point, she said, my mum and dad don't really like your daughters. And at which point, I went full obnoxious aggression, really right off. In fact, the scale probably needs to go down here somewhere for where I actually was. And it ended with your parents are leaving tomorrow, and if they don't go of their own accord, I will physically boot them out. And so, well done me. So yeah, they left. I had 1 or 2 days of lovely stress-free, or relatively stress-free days, and then wallop, up it went, as of course the the outcome of my obnoxious aggression started to manifest itself with my wife basically threatening to cut various parts of me off. So what I had to learn was this idea of caring personally and challenging directly, and certainly I've found this both a struggle but also very, very enlightening, and it's where I've had my biggest wins, and it's where I've learned to control my stress in a bigger way than anything else. It also meant there was also some toxicity in my life. And I think what had happened, because I was so busy juggling everybody else's issues, that toxic people had kind of moved into my space and were peeing on my strawberries. And so some people just had to go, and then others had to be kind of cautioned. And really, what I'm saying about that slide really is around boundaries and around ensuring that you've got healthy boundaries, or that I had healthy boundaries that I could really focus on and defend when needed. That was easily the most difficult thing I had to do. Then this is going to jar a little bit, but it's only my opinion. For me, it was around fitness, not exercise. Around this time, I was doing plenty of exercise, and you know, Hamo had the charts every month, and I was up there for steps. I was up there for the amount I was running, and yet I was getting less fit. And so what I did, I changed it all around. I had to change it around after that incident. So Blair and I started doing strength sessions 3 times a week. I was doing a lot of passive stretching, just with breathing, just to calm it down. Very, very similar to the yoga. And then and the real kind of game changer, which shame on me, I'd never done before, was interval training. And by that I literally mean running for a couple of minutes, and then stopping and walking slowly, getting my breath back, and then running for another couple of minutes. And it was this insight around, forget about your heart, just do it, and then see how it goes and get better. And what I've realized with the exercise, not fitness, is that at no point was I really stressing myself, my heart, through the exercise. I was well within myself all the time. So I was doing lots of things, but it wasn't really getting me anywhere at all. So, and you see here, again, just going back to what this was telling me, so the VO2 max, which I don't entirely understand, shows that it's going in the right direction. I've now got an age of 40, which is, I don't know, I think all right for somebody who's 57. But more importantly, it's moving in the right direction as I've figured out fitness, not exercise, is what was working for me. Another one that causes a lot of discussion, but it's just something that I have found personally, around nutrition, not diet. I really got to confront something about diet, about nutrition, and what I realize is that I eat to live, I don't live to eat, and what I realize is most people are the other way around, and I also eat like I've stolen it, and I've had to really address why that is, and I'll be brutally honest with you, it goes right back to, even though I'm quite old, it goes back to my childhood. And when I was a kid, for reasons I won't go into, I got into a period where I had to eat my food separately to the rest of the family. My dad just didn't like it when I was eating for some reason. So I used to eat my food slightly before them, and I used to frigging scoff it down as fast as possible because I didn't want him to come in and end up wearing it. So, and what I've realized, even at this late age, is that has really influenced the way I look about food. So I've never learned to cook. I absolutely detest cooking programs with an absolute passion, even though the rest of the world doesn't. And what I've realized through this really is that actually I've got to address things that go way, way back. And exactly how I do that, I'm not entirely sure. But if I want to get to my goal, which I mentioned earlier, of a resting heart rate of 50, I've got to crack this nutrition. And it's not about, for me, it's not about going on a meal plan. It's not about cooking a batch of stuff beforehand. It's something up here that I've got to get through that block to move through the other side. Having said that, again, that was the resting heart rate. That was the day on the beach, up at around 63. It had just spiked up, and at the moment I'm around 54. Again, through some of the things I'm doing. So decent progress, but not I'm not silly enough to think that's over. I've clearly got some issues to go on nutrition. Sleep quality, again, something you can get from your Garmin, and I did all kinds of stuff on this. I was analysing REM, I was analysing deep sleep and how much sleep and so on. And actually, it didn't give me much information, but the one that really hit home, and I've got to be honest, I don't exactly know why, was the number of cycles per night. So the number of times you go from deep to REM to light to deep to REM and back again. And that graph on the orange line is the good month, the last month, and the blue line is the month of the boot camp incident. And what it showed me, and I've actually been a bit conservative on that blue line. It was actually slightly higher, but I kind of thought some of them were quite small. And even that was telling me that when I was asleep, I was bouncing all over the place. I wasn't really having good quality sleep. It was just bouncing all over because my stress levels had got to a point where I wasn't really capable of letting go. All of this from Garmin. And then finally, not from Garmin, but about meaning and purpose, which is another one of the key points. And these are just a few photos. So since the start of the year, the photograph on the left is my daughter Lydia, who started her first job this week. Also qualified, got her BEng from UCL. Top right rather is my wife, Kirsty. Her and I are definitely not on the same level that we were when the in-laws got booted out. We're in a much better place now. Bottom right is my daughter Molly, who's just got. She came here 2 years ago, and the way they grade them now is you get kind of a 9, and it goes 8, 7, 6. And she was here 2 years ago. She was about a 5 or a 6 student and kind of struggling. And she just got a GCSE. She's got all 9s and 8s, so she's very much on a growth trajectory. Super happy, super loving life. And in the middle there is my daughter Mary. We've just fed her some raw meat there, so she's a nice and nice and happy. Just lovely. She loves it. What was I saying about food? Yeah, and really, so the purpose is what the purpose has always been for me. It's always been about legacy and about growing, and obviously going from 1 to 5 females in the house. It is about trying to build a legacy that I didn't have before when I was somewhat all on my own. So, what's it meant 120 days later? Exactly 120 days since that episode, for my stress level. So I've now moved this down, and there's the wake-up call, and there is it moving down. So I'm about 23% below the stress level I was at that time. So it's a start. It's not the end. It's not a panacea, and I'm not foolish enough to think, well, I'm done now. I can sit down and put my feet up. But it has given me a real insight into what I need to do to really move the needle and really become super stress-free and get myself to a resting heart rate, which I think would be quite phenomenal for me. And within that, as you can see, there's a lot of other bits, a lot of moving parts around it that is why I use that target. And then finally, it's kind of obvious. I mean, shit happens, but it's only if you choose it to be shit. And I think that's where I got my biggest learning is this idea that, well, the world is the world and life is the life, but life is life. But it's just stuff. It's just stuff that happens. And if you're always in the present moment and never looking too far ahead and trying to worry about what's happened or what is about to happen, then it turns into stuff. It's really not that bad. So it's really been about my relationship towards the stuff that's happening. Because although some good stuff's happened, there's a lot of all the usual stuff that everyone has in their lives is still happening. And then in the middle there are a few guidelines that I'm starting to finesse and live by, and I won't go through them all. I think the one I mentioned set up boundaries, but the one that's really been kind of amazing for me is the one that says open up to astonishment and be prepared to be astonished, and this is about mindset for me, and it's about this idea that. I'll give you an example. He's not in the room actually here. So the amount of kind of serendipitous things that happen to you when you're fully open to all possibilities. And the best example in terms of person is obviously Billy. And I don't know if you've heard the story of Billy. What is it? Is it a whiskey, or it's some kind of liquor from? Rum. It's rum, isn't it? Yeah. And that story of Billy's is like 7 or 8 ridiculous coincidences, none of which would have happened if he wasn't Billy, if he wasn't totally open to all that stuff happening to him. And what I've found even in 120 days is that as I've tried to kind of become more open, it's amazing how often that happens. And I'll give you a little example. About a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, we're watching UK TV on dodgy box, and on comes the Emirates ad, and one of my daughters says, "Oh, that's not real. It's all CGI." And I said, "Actually, I'm pretty sure it is real. In fact, I know of one of the guys who did it. I know one of the guys who's up there. Never met him, but I know him, Shane, who many of us know." And about 20 minutes later, my daughter goes, "Oh yeah, it is real, look." And she showed me a photograph, and I said, "Oh yeah, there he is, that's Shane." The very next day, my phone goes, and it's Shane. And I've never spoken to Shane before that day. And now, there's a whole bunch of reasons as to why that happened. And I'm not saying it's some kind of magic, but it's that I could have always not taken the call. I could have always been too busy. I could have always made up some excuse. The baby might have needed a nappy changed. And 5 or 6 weeks later, Shane and I are good buddies. I mean, he scares me to death, but he's an amazing bloke. And who knows where that will lead? I don't, and I don't think he does. But it's just an example of this opening up to astonishment and getting ready to be astonished. There's various others there, but I won't go through them. I think that the lesson I want to take away and I want to leave is it's all about mindset. If you choose to be stressed, if you choose things to be shit, then they are, and you will be. If you choose and act in a way that allows you to be less stressed, then you also will be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done.